All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Troutdale Planning Commission for Wednesday, April 8th, 2026. If we could have roll call, please.
Counselor Glantz.
Present.
Sorry, I need to turn off my audio.
Don't want room echoing.
So you can turn yours, it's not gonna go anywhere.
All right, I hope I'm not echoing. Sorry about that. Commissioner Minkoff.
Live and in person.
Commissioner Kester.
Here.
Commissioner Prickett. Here. Commissioner Wilcox.
Here.
Chair Stephenson.
Here.
And Commissioner Allen.
Here.
All right. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Minkoff will be leading us this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there anyone wishing to speak to the Planning Commission this evening on a non-agenda item? Not seeing anyone online. Any non-agenda item? Nope. Okay. All right. And the next order of business is reviewing the minutes for March 11th, and we'll be doing that at the April 29th meeting coming up. Okay. And we have done a second session for this. Is that usual?
The second
For
session?
this hearing?
Oh.
It's a second session.
It does. I don't know why it says that.
It's like, again, I didn't look at the agenda, so
Okay.
I'm not sure. You guys are asking me questions that I am unaware of.
That's not a, yeah. It's okay. Doesn't have any bearing on you. Okay, great. All right. The matter before the Planning Commission this evening is case file LU-0007-2026, Halsey Design Standards, Main Streets on Halsey. This is a type 4 legislative hearing. And before we begin the hearing for tonight's agenda items, I'd like to explain a little about the Planning Commission and the procedure we'll be following for the public hearing. The Planning Commission is an appointed 7-member volunteer body of Troutdale citizens. Members of the Planning Commission are Troutdale residents who have been appointed by the City Council. They serve 4-year terms, they are strictly volunteers and receive no pay for their services. The Planning Commission serves as a citizen committee for the review of land use applications and various land use related matters within the city. Items which the Planning Commission consider include uses of land, subdivisions, major variances, land use policy plans, and development regulations. For some land use applications, the Planning Commission makes a final decision. For other applications, they are simply making a recommendation to the City Council, who renders the final decision. Tonight's application is a type 4 quasi-judicial or legislative hearing, and the City Council will be making the final decision. The Planning Commission will be making a recommendation to the City Council this evening. Quasi-judicial and legislative public hearings are held in accordance with Oregon law and procedures contained in the Troutdale Development Code. The hearing proceeds as follows. City staff presents their report, which includes applicable criteria and standards for the matter under consideration in the land use application. All testimony and evidence should be directed towards these criteria. If you believe that other criteria in the comprehensive plan, development code, or other city land use regulations apply, you must identify these criteria and explain why they apply to the decision. Planning Commission accepts public testimony relating to the application. The applicant is allowed to speak first, who will be the city, followed by proponents, then by opponents, and then by any parties neutral to the application. An opportunity will be provided to anyone testifying to clarify any issues raised. All issues raised by a participant during the public hearing must be sufficiently clear and specific to allow the Planning Commission and other parties an opportunity to respond to those issues. Failure to raise an issue during this public hearing may invalidate a future appeal based on that issue. Prior to closing the public hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence or testimony regarding the application. The Planning Commission must grant the request either by continuing the public hearing to a future date or by leaving the record open for at least 7 days to admit only that additional written evidence or testimony. If the record is left open for additional written evidence or testimony, any participant may file a written request for an opportunity to respond to new evidence submitted during the period the record was left open. If such a request is filed, the Planning Commission shall reopen the record to allow any person to raise new issues which relate to the new evidence, testimony, and criteria for decision making. As a final note, public hearings are recorded. Therefore, if you wish to speak to the agenda item this evening, please state your name and address for the record. And this is a legislative hearing. The Planning Commission will be making a recommendation to City Council. And before we open the public hearing, does anyone have any conflict or bias to declare on behalf of this application? Seeing none? All right. So with that, we will open the public hearing for case file LU 0007-2026, Halsey Design Standards, Main Streets on Halsey. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I'll pull up the presentation right now. There we go. Alrighty. My name is Dakota Meyer. I'm the Associate Planner here with the City of Troutdale. I'll be presenting the staff report proposed for the proposed text amendment to Chapter 4 in order to for the overlay Chapter 4 overlay zoning district of the Troutdale Development Code under case file number LU-0007-2026. Here is just a quick map showing what the overlay would encompass. The following areas represented, we represent the proposed Halsey Gateway Overlay District. The zones affected in this application include the Downtown Mixed Use Zone, MU1, and General Mixed Use, MU2. In 2025, Metro awarded a 2040 Planning and Development grant to the City of Troutdale to conduct an audit of the current development code to identify barriers to housing and economic development along the Halsey corridor. The key outcome of this code edit was to establish functional development standards with a focus on pedestrian connectivity and design aesthetics to expand the downtown feel along the Halsey corridor. As part of the scope of this work, the development package to Metro for a grant award, or the deliverable package to Metro for grant award, the city is required to review and consider the recommended code updates that were produced as part of the project. There is one primary request with this application. The recommended code updates are to Chapter 4 of the Troutdale Development Code to add the Halsey Gateway Overlay, or HGO, and incorporate design standards to the Halsey Street corridor. Here's an overview of the proposed amendments. We'll go through kind of the entire section in the next several slides, so bear with me. All the amendments will be, or this amendment will be entirely within Chapter 4, Zoning District Overlays. The section that will be added will be 4.700 Halsey Street, or Halsey Gateway Overlay District. Within this area, we will be adding residential and mixed use requirements with limitations for residential uses, add site design and building massing and articulation requirements, add building design requirements, And then add height bonus standards if a development exceeds 35 feet. A bonus is capped at 4 stories or 50 feet in the MU1 and MU2 zones. The first section that we come to in the proposed amendment is 4.715, residential and mixed use requirements. This section has limitations for residential uses. Residential uses are limited within the gateway overlay. Mixed use development requirement. Residential uses shall be permitted only when part of mixed use development, vertical or horizontal. So these standards are specifically for mixed use developments. Limitation on street level housing. No more than 50% of a lot frontage facing Southwest Halsey Street or historic Columbia River Highway in the gateway overlay may be occupied by ground floor street level residential uses. The next section is 7.20, site design and building massing and articulation requirements. This section has building orientation and massing, and these are just a couple of diagrams from the code. These are figures 2 and 3. 4.720 continued. Portions of the building facades that are vertically separated by a gap of at least 10 feet in width, extending at least 20 feet in depth from the street property line, are considered to be separate facades. Areas for the purpose of the facade area measurement. So this is a diagram showing, this is figure 4, showing the facade articulation standard. The next is 4.730, building design requirements. I'm going to run through these relatively quickly. So for the ground floor height, at least 12 feet in height. Ground floor windows, a minimum of 60% coverage. Ground floor entrances for residential uses, at least 50% of the dwelling units on the street-facing ground floor of a building must provide pedestrian access between the main entrance of the dwelling and the street. Weather protection standards. Screening utilities and equipment, they must be screened from street view. Pedestrian scale lighting must be provided within 20 feet of the street. And corner features, emphasize building corner or corner plaza. Again, these are a couple of diagrams from the proposed amendment showing these standards. The last section in this code is 4.740, height bonus and community benefits. For a height bonus, it is capped at 4 stories or 50 feet. You have to choose 4 of the listed 6 community benefits. A mural or public art, a total of 1% must be donated to the city art fund, in which the TCAB will will decide on what type of public art be used. Public seating, additional landscaping, oversized openings, additional weather protection, or enhanced architecture. Again, if an applicant chooses to go for a height bonus, they must choose 4 of the 6 listed. This also requires a planning commission review. It must be a type 3 review utilized in order to utilize the height bonus. And then lastly, the step down. On the portion of the site within 20 feet of a lot line that abuts a residential zoning district must step down. And a building setback must be at least 10 feet deep for every story above 35 feet. So that's a step back. We did receive a couple of public comments, or one public comment, one agency comment. The agency comment was an email, more or less just asking a question. It was from Glenn Hamburg with Metro. He had a question whether the standard of no more than 50% of lot frontage can be used as street-facing residential. Does it conflict with the Urban Growth Management Functional Plan Title I? In a response to Glenn, the 50% limitation is for mixed-use development only. All other approved housing types are not subject to the standard. And then we did receive a public comment, which I emailed out this afternoon, and then each of you have in front of you this evening from David Green. He's a Troutdale resident, in support of the proposed design standards and the 50-foot height bonus for the following reasons: the 20-minute city, vibrant streetscapes, balanced density incentives, and reasonable height transitions. Now, in the email that you all have in front of you, he does go into more depth as to each one of those four. I just thought it would be best not to fill the screen full of text. Proposed findings. These are the approval criteria that will be used by both Planning Commission and Council. The proposed change to the development code does not conflict with the applicable comprehensive land use plan goals or policies. The proposed change is consistent with the applicable statewide planning goals. The proposed change is consistent with the applicable provisions of Metro Code. Public need is best satisfied by this particular change, and the change will not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of the community. Staff find all these criteria are met. It is a very lengthy response to each one of those criteria within the staff report packet. So if you have questions, I'm happy to go through the staff report with you, but I did not add each one of those as it would take up several slides. Staff recommendation. Through several work sessions with planning, staff finds the proposed amendment meets the needs of the city of Troutdale as written. Staff offers the following recommendation for the conduct of the April 8th, 2026 public hearing regarding the proposed amendments to the Troutdale Development Code. Staff recommends approval of case file LU 0007-2026 and adoption of findings for City Council consideration. The City Council is tentatively scheduled for May 12th, 2026 and May 26th, 2026. If this matter is continued, the schedule will be affected, or there's a chance that City Council may choose a different date. And that is the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Any questions?
Questions for staff?
I have a few.
Okay. Clarification or deliberative?
Deliberative.
Okay.
Then I'll wait on that.
Yeah, we'll save the deliberative and just clarifications now if there's any.
Looks like Commissioner Glantz has her.
Okay. Commissioner Glanz.
Yep, I have a few questions. When we're looking at these different bonus items, will they always be weighted equally? Or if someone comes in with something, really strong and they just barely meet everything else, I mean, is that something that the Planning Commission would decide in a review, or is it more black and white? You need to check each box and move on.
It is a requirement that a proposed development does meet 4 of the 6 listed.
Okay.
If Planning Commission, if they're not meeting it and Planning Commission thinks that it's ultimately up to the Planning Commission to approve that application. So if they come in and with an application, staff writes staff report, says, hey, they're meeting 3, not 4, but Planning Commission reads it and says, no, I think that's it's up to the Planning Commission ultimately. However, as far as staff goes, we need to review it as if they are meeting a minimum of 4 of the 6.
Okay. And there's some reference to enhanced architecture. Are there specifics for that, or is that a general term?
Let me get to that real quick.
On page 64, one.
Yeah, page 64, enhanced architecture, how the code is currently written says, in enhanced architecture, the building design demonstrates an enhanced design through a combination of the use of multiple materials, for example, brick and timber, architectural features, such as facade articulation, ornamentation, and varied roof lines, balconies, and bay windows.
Okay. So it's basically open to interpretation with some general guidelines.
True. The point of that is not to just have
Yeah,
a
that's fine.
tilt-up building type thing. Yeah.
I was worried when things, there's some ambiguity, can't say that word, where that leads it into, well, technically it's meant because it's enhanced, but it's enhanced to who and how. And I don't know, that makes me a little nervous sometimes. Will the images that are shown be included in the materials, like the actual, okay,
Yep. Those are pulled directly from the proposed code amendment.
okay.
Yeah.
And the outdoor seating, does it have to be, can it be only for the business or can it be open to anyone? Do we have any definition on that?
So it's public seating.
Okay.
Are you meaning the weather protection?
Okay. And last one, the art fund. When it says mural or art fund, does that mean that they decide what the mural is?
No. So after our discussion at our last work session last month,
Right.
staff has gone back and so now the code reads mural or public art installation, a contribution of 1% to the city's public art fund. The mural or public art installation visible from public right-of-way shall be approved by the Town Center Advisory Board.
But there's not much they can really do to deny it, short of it, being lewd or, I mean, if you can't even say it's politically provoking.
Currently, at this time, we do not have standards for a public art type installation. So
I don't think
with
there's much
this,
we can do.
I mean, there are certain things we can do.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying as far as freedom of speech, and we can't infringe on that. But there are certain standards that the city can at least list out that the proposed installation or mural has to meet.
So if I'm a coffee shop and I decide to have a giant structure of, a copper coffee cup, is that art?
We don't have the standards currently written. That's something that would be like a next step for this. This was in response to some feedback we heard from Planning Commission last month. And so we wanted to make sure we have it in there. If this were to move forward, what that would require then is, I believe, TCAB and Planning Commission coming up with a set of standards in order to review potential art and that it has to meet in order to be approved. Because it does have to be approved. So that's a good question. At this point, right now, tonight, I don't have a definitive answer for you.
Yeah, that was all I had.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Wilcox?
Thank you, Chair. First off, I'm glad to see there's a representative from MIG with us tonight online. I'm going to have some technical questions for the text. As far as staff, I have a couple statements in the staff report I wanted to refer to. Throughout, I'm going to be going by the page numbers that are in the bottom right rather than the individual divisions. But anyway, looking at the last paragraph on page 3, it reads mixed use MU1 and mixed use MU2 zones is 35 feet. This would only allow for a 2-story building. Saying this would only allow for a 2-story building, isn't true on the face of it. If you maybe if you have a 12 or 15 foot ground floor, but for example, the height range for Home Forward was 32 to 38 feet. Eagle Ridge actually came in under 35 feet. So I question that statement. Then on the next page, it reads the paragraph that starts in March 2026. Property owners, developers, and consultants who suggest that projects cannot pencil out or be accomplished unless they are granted variances to build higher. What I'd refer you to in regard to that is the byway in Wood Village, where they've got a single-story commercial storefront, and then the taller structures, apartments basically, set back off the street. So my point is, you can do mixed use, multiple use, multi-story, but they don't have to all be multiple use within the multi-story. It's kind of horizontal is what
Horizontal versus,
horizontal.
right. I get what you're saying, Paul.
Okay, that's all I had for staff.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Minkoff, you had some?
Yeah, thank you. Well, my question's along the same line, and if after asking to decide this might be for a different part of this meeting, then I'm fine to hold off. My first question is, does the Halsey Gateway overlay fall within the airport landing overlay? And if so, what effect does 4.111 and 4.114 have on the proposed 50-foot height bonus? Because as you know, whichever is the more restrictive is going to take over, or is going to supersede. So does that affect it?
So it does fall within, however, it does not affect 50 feet because how the airport landing field is, it falls within a 7:1 ratio with the airport landing field. If it were on either end of the landing strip, it'd be a little bit different, but on the sides, it's a 7:1 ratio. So it can go up 7 feet for every 100 feet away from the landing strip itself. So if someone were to build to that standard right now in that zone, they can build up to 200 feet. So this would be more restrictive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Continuing, it's mentioned that weather protection has to be some percentage of facade coverage, but it's not stated anywhere an exact percentage. So my question is it in a figure, an image in the plan, or because if it is, then it really ought to be spelled out in the text. Otherwise, it's going to be impossible to administer. It says the code requires, here's what it says, that the code requires weather protection along, quote, the minimum percent of the facade. But the actual percentage is only shown in a figure and not stated in text.
I see what you're saying.
That creates an enforceability problem.
Yeah, and I believe this is Keegan Gulick, MIG. I believe that's in Figure 5, where it says that minimum percentage is 60%.
Right.
And I think
That
that's
really
a
ought to
good
be spelled
catch.
out in the text.
Yep, I'm just reading.
The next issue, the Public Art Fund, Sandy brought that up. It talks about a contribution option of 1%, but there's no discussion of what is that 1% calculated on. Is it permit valuation, construction cost, project cost, or something else?
That was supposed to say permit value, or for total valuation of the project. Yeah.
Okay,
So that was,
you'll add that.
yeah. I'll do that right this second so I don't forget.
Going ready for the next one. Okay. The residential use allowed only as part of mixed-use development, but 4.715B appears to say that all new developments must provide at least 1,000 square feet of enclosed commercial space. Is that intended to apply literally to every new development in the HGO, the Halsey Gateway overlay, or only to mixed-use projects?
So can you repeat that one more time? I'm just gonna get there in my code.
Sure. 4.715B says all new developments must provide 1,000 square feet of enclosed commercial space. The phrase "all new developments" may be broader than you had intended.
No, so that is for new developments, if they're going for, we're looking for commercial. Now, if it's a residential development, because like I said, these are for mixed use.
Right.
And if it's just a residential development, because there are sites within this zone that are currently too small for any sort of mixed use. So if they were ever to redevelop, then they can't do the stuff that's listed in this code. So that means they have to develop, maybe it's a townhome, in which case this would not apply.
Does it specify that? Because 4.715B literally applies to all new development. So that's what I want to know, because it could unintentionally make housing projects harder to build.
It does start out by saying options for non-residential uses in mixed-use developments.
So look at 4.715B. Where are you looking at?
Under 4.715.
B uses the phrase
Options for
all new
non-residential.
development options.
Right at the start, options for non-residential uses in
The
mixed.
sentence before that, options for non-residential uses.
Okay, but should we revise maybe the next sentence? All new developments must provide a minimum of 1,000 square feet of enclosed commercial space. All, I mean, it's very.
Yeah, I think we should, we can clean that up. It's just we're saying,
Kind of contradicts it.
yeah.
Okay, just make it match. Okay, my next question is, was subsection H skipped on purpose? It skips from G to I. There is no subsection H.
Nope, that's just a script right there.
So you'll number the paragraphs and or re-letter them? Okay. Next, on goal 12 findings, the report says the amendment is consistent with the transportation system plan, but the finding is really brief. What transportation analysis or factual basis supports that conclusion, given that the amendment increases the potential development intensity along the corridor?
The intent is for more pedestrian friendly, and that we have parking standards, but also parking is no longer required in this area due to CFET guidelines. So while it could, right now, how our current transportation plan is already, I believe it's an arterial. For the Halsey's already an arterial, so it's designed to have high flow of traffic. So the proposed standards within this development, or this code amendment, will not increase above the threshold of what it's already planned for.
Is that or should that be actually codified, that somehow it ties to the transportation code?
I mean, I can go more in depth for the next staff report, on the next staff report.
Because it really kind of hinges
Because in the whole plan for this is more for pedestrian friendly, walkability, things of that nature. So that's why transportation, for goal 12, and organ administrative rules, aren't affected as much with the proposed, amendments that are in front of you. So that's why it wasn't we already have public transit there and this won't increase. So that's why it wasn't as laid out. Because this isn't going to have an effect on that.
Okay. Last two. The staff report says staff may return with a revised standard, but doesn't clearly show what changed between the work session and the hearing draft. Was anything changed in March?
Which section is staff report?
That is page 3 of 11. And actually page 4, lower middle, March 2026 work session paragraph ending with, quote, may return with a revised standard at the public hearing. So that's just, the question is, was there anything else revised between?
The revised standard was to the mural art, based on the discussion we had at that March Planning Commission work session. So that's why it says may, because we were still working on it, and then we got it done in time for this staff report. So that was revised based on what the Planning Commission had seen last time.
Okay. And last but not least, I understand a legislative type 4 process, a mailed notice is not required. Right. However, is staff satisfied that affected property owners and corridor businesses had meaningful notice of tonight's hearing and an opportunity to comment before the commission closes its hearing?
Yes. Yes, we did everything that we're required to do, and we've also all of them have been notified of this project, where it's located. They've received mailers in the past. They know where the project page is. It's been posted on the website. So I do believe that there's been adequate notice.
And presented to the CAC?
Yep, it was presented to the CAC last week.
Right.
And then they were informed that it will be coming to tonight's public hearing. And so if they had any comments, questions, or would like to attend themselves or tell others, welcome to do so.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I think it's the bottom of page 2 of 11. You have the example where 45 feet only would allow for a 2-story building. And so that brings my curiosity. How much space are we wanting to calculate for roof line?
So that is why we're capping it at 4 stories, because for 50 feet, it depends on the type of roof line. Let's start there, right?
Whether flat or
Pitched. Pitched is how height is measured is to the midpoint between the peak and the eave. Or if it's a single slope, same concept. Any sort of slope is calculated to the midpoint before the highest point and the lowest point. The maximum height can be that midpoint.
Okay, so let's go worst case pitched. What would be for the type of building, the size of building that we're expecting in this area, based on lot size or whatever, what would that expected midpoint be from the top of the top floor?
So the maximum that it can be is 50 feet, that midpoint.
Well, no, I'm just trying to, for calculation's sake, because it's bringing into calculation.
Oh, floors wise, is that what you're?
Yeah, so when you start looking at this, you go, well, that's only going to allow 2 floor, right? Well, okay, what would we consider a pitched roof likely to be adding to the height of the floors?
In all honesty, let me just do a quick. No more than 4, worst case scenario. And if then it could be even less if it's a pitched, but no more than 4, because the ground floor is required to be 12
floors?
feet. Yeah, 4 stories.
Yeah, so I read through the material. I know how many floors we're talking about.
Yeah.
I know the size we're talking about. What I don't know is how much more space the roof line attaches,
How much height?
adds to it, right? And I know
So you're saying above that midpoint, above that?
So you got, I don't care how many floors, you got
Yeah.
1, 2, whatever. When you get to that top floor, now you're doing a roof, so let's go worst case, and you're doing a pitched roof, right? And you want that pitched roof, there's gonna be a distance from the top floor to the midpoint, right?
Yep.
What do we expect that to be based on the lot size and the expected size of the buildings?
I think it's gonna depend.
I think it really depends.
I don't think, Commissioner Allen, we can give you a definite, like, slope ratio for a roof line, when it's really gonna, like, depend on the structure that's being built, and I think
Or the building size.
the building size, correct.
Yeah.
How many,
And if it's a varied roof line.
And if it's a varied roof
you
line,
have multi-gables, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
But I was just trying to get for calculation's sake.
Yeah, and yeah, I think the thing
Saying, well, you can do a 3 foot, 3 foot for a roof. Well, that's obviously not going to be enough for a pitch, based on the minimum standards of the pitch. But you don't have anything in your head as to.
The way I look at it, just as a quick mental note as we've been going through this, is I think of a typical 2-story home in a residential neighborhood. Maximum height, 35 feet. So that's the max they could do, and most homes are pitched. So I just imagine that, but with a 12-foot ground floor commercial on the bottom. Just basically pick up that house and move it up. Because that's typically they're going to go with that same pitch. You're not going to go with a super steep pitch, but again, it really does vary depending on development. But that's just how my mind goes through this kind of picturing it as we've been going through this discussion over the last little over a year, is just kind of, take a 2-story home, pick it up, put a commercial on the ground. If you were to have a bunch of those like along and connected, that's kind of how my mind works. So a typical pitch roof, and again, development can be mono pitched, so it's just a single pitch. That's a lot what you see a lot more with kind of modern type design, but
Which would also be worst case, right?
exactly.
A pitched roof, single pitch, that's going to be the worst case.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to get in my head is how much that adds to the floors for the size of buildings that we're expecting here. Now I know it's based on snow load, right? And how much we're expecting, or should I say, the strength of materials used and so forth. Because it's got to be able to hold the load. And then you have a minimum pitch. But we should have some idea of, even if you tell me worst case, what's our idea?
It could vary. I guess I would say, best case would be, I think if you went with a California roof, you could do three stories.
at 35, 35 feet.
Yeah.
12 for the first one. If the second two were 10, which would be realistic, that would put you at 32. And the top of that roof pitch should be no more than 18 inches.
You could, but if there was a restaurant,
It's a California roof, so it's flat. See what I'm saying? You'd have the parapet, but other than that, you'd have a flat roof.
I understand what you're saying. I think there could be some other uses, though, that go into that bottom floor that are gonna need a higher ceiling height for mechanical equipment. So if that bottom floor is going to be taller than 12 feet because, they're grilling hamburgers or something, you'll exceed 35 feet.
Right. I'm just saying it's like that it would only allow for, I guess it would allow for 2 levels depending on the use.
That's a better statement. That's correct.
Okay.
I mean, is it possible that a pitched roof could add another 25 or 30 feet? So at the midpoint of the roof, but another 25 feet?
Unlikely,
Unlikely.
the size of lot that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
It'd be,
Really hard to do.
it's kind of thinking of an A-frame sitting on top of which is just not likely. I've never seen a development come through. They're not typically like that because it's not aesthetically pleasing. I guess if you're thinking worst case scenario, I find that hard to believe, but I guess, but I don't see that as ever being a development at all.
And why can't the code be changed to just say the apex is the measurement standard and not the midline?
The midline that's state
Oregon.
standard,
It's a
Oregon
state standard.
building code.
So
Commissioner Kester.
while this discussion was going on, I was just doing some digging and calculating. And a typical commercial roof pitch is, from what I was able to find, is about a 4 to 12 rise over run. And for a 60-foot building width, again, a small office building, small multi-use, you're looking at from top to bottom, you're only looking about 10 foot of height. So at most, if that was a 50-foot building, you're only looking at 5 feet past the midpoint, the measured midpoint. So the crown of the building would be 55 feet, typically. Anything higher than that, you're talking about massive building that you don't have space for.
Okay, and I'll save the rest of this. So at this time, I would like to invite comment from the public, if anyone wishes to speak to this application. And we will start with people that are proponents of the application, starting in chambers. Anyone is a proponent?
I'll go.
Come forward, sir.
Okay. Where would you like me to
Just sit down.
sit down?
See,
Okay.
stand up and sit down.
All right. So,
State your name and address for the record.
David Green. I'm a Troutdale resident. I'm also the one that sent that email that you all might have.
Okay.
I don't have a whole lot more to add, but just that I am a resident and I am adjacent of that proposed HGO, and that I just want to reiterate that I endorse the plan. Basically, I would prefer like some high density in the area with like some shops and things like that. I think that'd be really nice to have. So I agree with everything. So.
All right, thank you very much.
Do you mind letting us know, it's up to you, letting us know you're adjacent. Where adjacent?
Yeah, I'm at the Gateway Landing townhomes
Okay.
that are, I guess that'd be like west, just west of that HGO. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak as a proponent? Seeing none. Anyone wishing to speak as an opponent?
I wish I was a proponent, but I'm not.
Good evening.
Good evening. Erin Jansen's, 302 Southeast Harlow, the old church. I want to thank all the commissioners and staff, because this is when people aren't. Yeah, when people aren't agreeing with you, it's really kind of like not a lot of fun. But first, I have some more questions. So I really appreciated listening to all of your questions and all of your ads. So if I may ask a few questions, I'm here mostly regarding the issue of increasing the height. Thank you for responding about why we don't do what Commissioner Minkoff said of just measure where the height is the highest. I feel like it's very misleading. I understand that it's a state code now. It didn't used to be. So that has changed. I think it's a disservice to the public to do that. I just think it's really appalling that they're doing it, because it's misleading. So, but it's not your fault. So anyway, sorry. Who recommended these standards? I mean, did this group come up with these standards and put these together, and now you're discussing it and we're going to vote on it? Or where did these standards come from, specifically the height?
I think generally they come from state. The state has been mandating infill and multi-use, and they're very keen on trying to get one of these to get more of these 20-minute neighborhoods built all across the state. And the only way that can really be done is when you have mixed-use properties going in, and when you have much higher density population going in, because that is what's needed to support the economy and all of those retail and commercial businesses that are going on. So there is a push at the state level to be accommodating all of that. Then we are trying to adapt as best as we can with the state requirements to still make Troutdale the beauty, the gem that it is, and maintain its charm. And we all have an interest
So
in doing
I
that.
can speak to that a little bit more. This
This has got a long history, so I'm going to let Mr. Meyer take it.
This project goes back to 2017,
Okay, the Halsey.
the Halsey corridor with the 3 cities.
Right.
So when we wrapped that project up in 2024 with the denial, what staff heard at the time of being in planning commission and then ultimately at city council was that it didn't, during that entire project, this is going on 5, 6, 7 years at that point, Troutdale's voice wasn't heard. Felt like it was a little more bullied out by the other 2 cities on what they wanted. But we were directed by planning commission that there was still some good stuff in the plan that was put together at that time from the consultant at the time was Cascadia Partners. So staff went back out, got a grant to look a little bit deeper, take the feedback we initially heard for the denial and the work session before that denial, the ultimate hearing. And we went out, got another grant, and this time worked with MIG. And they took what was there.
Who's the grant from?
The grant is from Metro 2040 grant for the corridor, based on the corridor and town center. So then we went out and took what we originally had from that Cascadia Partners project, talked to MIG, met with them. Hey, this is what we heard they did like. This is what we heard they really didn't like. And then MIG went out and started putting together this, and along with multiple work sessions and some a lot of community engagement, receiving feedback on proposed plans. Because what was in the initial Cascadia Partners was they went out and did some field research based on developers. And developers said they don't want to build mixed use because they want the money unless they can go up higher, because they want the money for the residential. Because it's easier to rent than it is for commercial. Well, they were at that time, I think they were proposing 55 feet. So we knocked it down, capped it off at 4 floors. That's what we were hearing, was we didn't want to go that high, but we still want mixed use in those zones. Right now, our mixed use zones we're seeing a lot more residential, just base residential, townhomes, things like that. So we want to get more of that mixed use commercial and residential or mixed use horizontal with commercial and residential next to one another. So it was a mixture of previous history on the site, and then staff also taking feedback from planning commission at the time, working with another partner to come up with these standards.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the background. Why is the height called a height bonus? I feel like I'm being sold a used car.
I can speak to that as well. It's a bonus because the only way, that's if you want to go. Now, you don't have to do the height bonus if you don't want to as a developer. You don't have to. You have to meet all the other requirements. But if you want to go up in height, and this is what was based on that feedback we had heard, because the developer's like, well, we want to go up. So initially they just tried going up. That was a hard no. So here is like, hey, if you're going to go up, then you have to meet these standards. So it's a bonus, but you need to provide community benefit as well.
Okay. There's midpoint. The other thing is, this is a very, this has a lot of value for aesthetics. Why don't you guys have more drawings? Why don't you guys have street drawings with profiles of the buildings and the setbacks and all of that lined out?
We're working on that. I'm still seeing if we can get some composite drawings from our consultant.
Like I feel like that is something we should be looking at right now. And it's not a slam on anybody. I just think, wow, like questions have been asked and several of those questions could have been answered by those drawings that are pretty simple to do with a ruler. So I'm just kind of surprised. So anyway, they would have been helpful for me also. So with that, I'm going to launch into my other points. So thanks for answering my questions. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to speak as a member of the Town Center Plan group that made up and discussed both our urban renewal and this Halsey corridor area in between Edgefield to Troutdale and the area that we are referring to now. In that Town Center Plan, it mentions and discusses the 35-foot height standard, and that it was stated pretty tactfully because there was a lot of controversy in those meetings. And I'm sorry that no one here was on that committee, but if you speak to some other, well, you were on that committee? You were on that committee, weren't you? I'm sorry. You're so quiet. You're so quiet.
I usually have more of an, okay, never mind. More of a nightmarish effect on me.
So then the chair could testify to this. There was a lot of controversy over the height. And I will say that the vast majority of citizens on that committee did not want our heights to be increased. They did not want to become an urban city. They did not want the look of an urban area. They don't want to be at the time the 20-minute city was not in the dialogue, but they didn't want to be looking like a city. If people wanted to be in the city, they can go to Portland. And if, in my opinion, if Wood Village and Fairview want to join and become a 20-minute city, they can just go down to Wood Village and Fairview. Like Troutdale is a gem. Troutdale has something very unique that I believe needs to be protected. And the fact that we're trying to become and look like a dense urban area just flies in the face of being a town, a small town that is so desirable to so many because it's becoming so rare. And our proximity to a city is fantastic. But why would we want to become and look like a city? That's why many people move here, and that's why many people stay here, is because of that charm that we have. But again, I do want to emphasize that in the Town Center Plan, there was a lot of push from staff to try to get us, because I think they were being pressured by Metro, for them to increase, or for us to increase our recommendation of height. And most people were adamantly opposed to it, and kind of a little bit sick about it. It did get mentioned, and even staff, when staff finally had to weigh in on it, had to just kind of concede that it would have some barriers, it would have a lot of drawbacks, and that it was that the people were excited about it. Another thing about the Town Center Committee is that we had numerous open public houses where we received comment, and unsolicited, unbiased. We did not plant any words. We did not plant anything for people to fill out or check a box. It was like, what's important to you? What do you value most about Troutdale? What do you find that that draws you to Troutdale? And all of those things were about being in a small town that was charming with close proximity to a city, but they did not want to be in the city. They don't want that urban density. So I'll move on. That's enough of that. I'm concerned that it's out of scale, even with the setback. For the aesthetics that we discussed, the drawings would be helpful. When you have a wider road, a wider corridor, it can help absorb a taller building. But when you don't have a wider corridor, it can be it creates, it's just out of scale, and you can create tunnels, much like when you're driving through Northwest Portland in the Pearl District or something. You get in these corridors and you're just following around. It creates a shade impact, it blocks views. I didn't hear any discussion about parking, but I have concern about parking and increasing the density that much more. We've already got parking issues. Also more noise, more height contains more noise. I'm concerned about the noise that's going to happen when we do the urban renewal with the height there, of how that's going to reflect the, not only block views, but it will also reflect noise up the hill from the trains. I'm trying to like sort through my various notes, sorry. Yeah, I guess if there's that much pressure from Metro to become a blur with Fairview and Wood Village, then I would say put it before the voters. To take the pressure off yourselves, because this is an ugly issue that I think will carry a potential stain on Troutdale. I mean, forever. It'll be lasting, you know, and that's the scary thing about planning here, is that you guys have the potential to create so much good, but if something slips through, it's also, you recognize how permanent it is. So I just urge you to be very, very cautious and think about what makes Troutdale unique, and how do we preserve that. So thanks. I'm going to stick around and observe everything and listen and learn, and I hope it goes well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone online wishing to testify as an opponent? Okay, go ahead, Shelby.
Hi, Shelby Stephenson, 1820 Historic Columbia River Highway. And gosh, I agree so much with what Aaron just said, but what I was lined up to talk about was concerns about the height. I'm one of those people that just does not want to see the height. I love Troutdale. I just love the small town feel, and I just don't want to become an urban city like Portland. That's why I don't live there. So I still have really concerns. I'm just not interested in us increasing the height. I just think we just see what development comes along, and, you know, way in the future, if we need to have taller, but I don't want to be tall. I think we want to be short buildings in this feel small town. I also thought it's too easy, the little things they have to do to go to an additional height. I just thought, really, just buy a piece of art, and really, that's one of the things criteria. I have concerns about if we were to add the height, which I don't want, but the parking thing, and that just came up. It was just stated that the CFAC stuff would be in effect where we can't demand that there be parking. So I think we already have a parking problem. We don't need more. So I think that's another reason not to add this height onto it. And what was my other point here? Oh yeah, some of the criteria besides the art, like adding a plaza, like, you know, you get a park bench on the side and you can add another floor to yours, other height. It just kind of seems ridiculous. So, and then I don't know if you said parking has to be in the back, but is there gonna be like, if this becomes a block of properties and it's all solid and you're in the middle, your building is, would you not have a way to get people to be able to even park in the back if you don't even have to provide parking? Would you have to go down to the next block to get in, to access the parking, if you even decide to put in parking? Does that make sense what I'm asking? Like, it's a block of buildings and they're all just one right after another, and you're the middle building. Like, is it going to be a solid scape like they do in cities where you can't get access to the parking lot? You have to go to the next block to get in behind the building to park. And then how do you get into the business? Do you have to walk around? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
It does.
does.
And that's our current downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do have there, um, I guess there are breaks in the buildings. You're right, not continually, but I guess I pictured a big giant. I guess I pictured on Halsey this big long block of thinking, oh my gosh, how would you park? But then they're not going to provide parking. So anyhow, okay, so that's essentially mine. I'm just not in favor of this height at all. And I sit on the Citizen Advisory Committee, and I know I expressed it there. I don't think we took a vote and decided to forward recommendations one way or another, and some were in favor of this, some were not. So anyhow, so thank you.
All right, thank you.
I have a follow-up question.
Okay, a follow-up question.
Follow-up.
Okay,
While we're still on opponents,
yes.
I'll just throw it out there. If TCAB, you said the majority wanted the restriction at 35 feet. So TCAB, I guess, whatever their resulting recommendation was not to exceed 35 feet. How did we get from 35 feet to 50? What was that process?
So I can answer that. So the parcels that we're looking at are zoned mixed use, mixed use 1 and mixed use 2. We're talking about mixed use buildings. If you want to see commercial on these sites and true mixed use buildings on the site, we've been told that 35 feet as a height limit, it's really restrictive, and we won't see a commercial aspect to those buildings on these sites that are actually zoned for mixed use. And what we have, and they're gonna have to come in if they come in now and they have to go higher than that 35 feet, they have to go through the variance process. So what this code does, it takes out that variance process. It allows for a higher height building if the developer chooses to go higher. They have to provide for X amount, 4 out of the 6 extra standards that benefit the community. And the planning commission gets to review the development.
And those 6 standards, I will say, were based on feedback we received from community engagement and asking the community of what out of these, I think there was more, I think there was like 8, that would you prefer out of these 6 to see if you had an option. And those were the 6 highest rated.
And right now, I just want to say, if somebody comes in right now and they want to put in a mixed use development, but they have to go higher than 35 feet, and they go through that, variance process. That variance process doesn't offer these other community benefits.
Aesthetics, design.
Building design, building height, maybe, public art. You won't get that through the variance process, but we've added that in to make sure that the community is getting some sort of extra benefit.
Can I ask? So is the 50-foot height, sorry. I forgot to ask this earlier. Aaron Jansen's again. Is the 50-foot height, which is not really 50 feet, it's really 50 feet plus the other 50% of the roof. So let's just call that what it is. Is there no variance allowed at that point? They cannot apply for a variance. They are maxed out at 50 plus whatever their other 50% of their roof is.
So this question actually did come up during a planning commission work session, either last month or the month before. City staff and we as a city itself within our development code cannot hinder or write in a variance is not allowed. It's up to the applicant is always willing, can always do, I request a variance. Now, whether it will be approved or city staff will approve, have findings, because in order for a variance, you need to have pretty strict criteria. It needs to be based on topography, some sort of site issues, maybe it's the design of the site. It's pretty difficult to
I've been
write.
around a little while, and I've seen some variances go through that really had
But-
no meaning other than that they wanted to build a bigger building.
True, but it depends on if it's over 15%,
Right.
it has to come to planning commission.
Right, but if it's 15% or under, they don't have to come to the planning
True,
commission.
and that's about 3 feet of a 50-foot building, give or take.
50% of a 50-foot building is 3 feet?
It's,
We can do more math.
we calculated this
7.5.
at one of the,
7.5.
yeah, sure, 7.5. So that's not enough for a whole nother floor. So there
No,
isn't,
you start getting that, and now you're getting, again, that's midline of the roof. So, something else to think about.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. I guess let's go ahead and start with deliberations.
We need a motion to close public hearing.
I'd like to leave it open in case someone
Do
wants
you want staff to respond to the variance? I know that Dakota.
You did bring it up.
Okay.
Pardon me?
I'm happy with it.
Okay. Is that all right if we leave it open? All right. Okay, does someone want to start? Or does someone have any questions or comments? Commissioner Allen,
So what I think I'm hearing.
page number maybe.
Yeah, what I think I'm hearing here is a testimony that, would like to have more shops around the area and what it takes to get that, right? And I'm hearing from the others that they're very concerned about Troutdale becoming to look more like the larger cities. And I can't help but wonder, and maybe I need to ask this, because developers, we talk about needs, but really, developers always prefer the densify and get the maximum amount for their cost, right? And citizens are always working to have a nice place to live. And so you're trying to balance that stuff out. So I can see where 2 floors is difficult, 4 floors, that can get unwieldy for what we're used to here. Is 3 floors something that would be considered, or would we be in the same boat, right?
Well, I think we're at 3 floors for the most part.
You think so, depending on type of.
You're at 3 floors. I think it'd be hard to, pardon me?
35 feet?
35 feet, I think, is going to most likely give you 3 floors.
Well, if
I'm
they're
kinda
4-foot floor,
Base floor, yeah.
base floor.
Yeah.
And then what are the height of
10
floors?
10.
10.
Does anybody know off the
So
top of
12.
their head what
So
that
flat
is?
roof, you can do that.
That?
Think about uses.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
1.5 foot center line.
I'm just getting a visual, that's all. I know about uses. Anybody know how tall that is? I know we mentioned it earlier, but it's been a
As
while.
far as I know, Home Forward didn't go over at least to roof midline, they didn't go over the 35.
I thought they got a variance.
There was a whole,
Done through a development agreement, so there is.
Right.
Yeah, so.
there was a whole pack of variances that came with Home Forward, but I don't recall that being one of them. I mean, and I know, and that development is very, very deceptive when it comes to height. Believe me, I know, because I stare at it out my front door. And topography, this is a prime example as to why we offered the height variances, because topography makes all the difference in the world.
Right.
Because I was personally very, very concerned that was going to obstruct views. And in practice, because of the height it was built to, and even up to the very tip of the roof line, because of the receding topography, the only thing that blocks is the industrial ports of North Troutdale, which I'm good with. In fact, to a large extent, that development improved my view because it removed a whole line of very unsightly trees. So, yeah, and it's really situational. And because like a 35-foot flat roof building straight up, which this code allows, is going to, I think, look unwieldy to pedestrians.
Right, but if I think about this one, right, those are probably 10-foot floors.
Yep.
You got 3 of them. You're at 30. That roof is more than 5 feet.
Yeah, but not by a lot.
No, but that would require a variance.
Well, if it was a 10-foot roof, if that's a standard pitched roof, from edge to crown, that's probably about 10 feet of roof. So it'd be 5 feet up to midline.
Isn't 612 the Troutdale minimum?
612 is Troutdale minimum. 412 is more the standard.
So the question is when we talk about usage, as was brought up, a commercial, you typically have a taller floor, right, than you do for residential, especially on the bottom.
Right.
That's why it's 12 feet.
You had a couple.
And that's why we're talking about higher, but this is either 35 or very close to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would expect that to roof midline, those buildings are within a foot or two of the max.
So then the question would be, would 40-foot work, since it is commercial, needs to be a little bit bigger, right? Would 40-foot work are the opponents, would they be opposed to 40-foot?
I don't know, I think that's a possibility. Okay. Treat that as an option.
Can I ask Steph a question?
Yeah, I did not close it, but we'll have to wait till later.
Okay.
When I open it back up again. Okay. Commissioner Wilcox, you had your hand up? Did you decide no?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I actually have several technical kind of questions for MIG. Some of the text in the update. And I'd almost have to go through it page by page. I don't know if you want to go to that extent or not, but
Well, I think we're going to get to page by page at some point, but
okay, works for me.
okay. We've been kind of giving this the general, but I think we're going to need to go through. And we don't have anything prior to 4.700, right?
Correct.
Okay. We're adding that. So, don't mind, we'll just take this shot by shot, and we'll start with page 49 of 120. And we're starting with 4.700, which is the new red line text. Have anything on this page, Mr. Wilcox?
Nope, nothing on 49.
Okay. So blistering along, we're at 50.
I do have a couple on 50.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay, under 4715A1, it reads residential uses shall be permitted only when part of a mixed-use development. My reading of that is, say you've got an individual lot, got tax lot X, say. The way that reads is whoever develops that individual lot to have residential on it, they also have to have commercial on it. And the number 2 kind of implies that also. You have to have, if you're going to have residential, you also have to have commercial. My understanding of mixed use is more what I was talking about with the byway in Wood Village. You've got horizontal development where you have, in one area of the lot, you might have 100% commercial, and next door you've got 100% residential. But the way this reads is that each individual building has to be mixed use, which I wouldn't agree with. So
Let's say for mixed-use development requirements, that's if you're building a mixed-use development, then the next sentence, residential uses shall be permitted only when mixed use development. So that's for mixed use.
well, the way I'm reading it is you can't, okay, in MU1 or MU2, if you adopt this overlay district, the only way you can't have 100% residential. Is that correct?
You can have residential, this is for mixed-use developments. That's why it says mixed-use development requirements shall be, any residential shall be part of a mixed use, whether vertical or horizontal. And it has limitations for those mixed-use developments, and an option for non-residential, whether that's commercial, or if it's a space that, mixed use, you're not proposing mixed use, then you can do townhome, whatever other permitted uses are listed.
But no more than 50% of the lot frontage facing homes may be occupied by ground floor residential uses.
For either vertical or horizontal mixed use.
Or anything else. Okay.
So basically, the smaller, those little tiny lots that are adjoining the railroad tracks, that commercial just isn't gonna make any sense, or mixed use just isn't gonna make sense. The building townhomes or something along that line is fully within this code.
Exactly, or like right when you cross over 257th, and if you look south, there's a bunch of smaller kind of townhomes that have businesses in there, and I think one of them's a real estate agent or something like that, and then like those, you can't build mixed use on those. They're not large enough to meet the mixed use requirements. So those have to be, if they're ever redeveloped, they have to be some sort of, they could do commercial, they could do residential, something, but it's just not large enough to meet a base mixed use standard.
And apologies if I don't have more of this familiar personally, but I'm assuming there's a section in the development code somewhere that defines the minimum lot characteristics for a mixed use development.
Yeah, square footage requirements for a lot.
So if something doesn't meet those requirements, then all of these limitations for mixed use just simply don't come up.
Correct. We can't force someone to do mixed use on a lot that's not large enough. Otherwise, that's a taking, and we can't do that.
Ms. Palmer, I remember something coming out of the state about repurposing commercial space for residential. That it was allowed without a permit. Remember that? It could be commercial space could be.
The state did, I believe, make it easier, but you still have to go through the permitting process and do a change of use from commercial to residential.
Okay, so if we require this, couldn't that come back in? Right? So I could file an application based on that criteria.
Well, if you're doing a mixed-use building,
But let's say it's a year later and I can't find a tenant, couldn't I come back in and say, okay, I want to make this residential? And I'm following House Bill, whatever. No?
I don't believe so.
Okay. So I thought there was something about repurposing commercial space to residential.
I would have to go back and refresh my memory on that, but I don't think that would apply in this situation.
Certainly, the intent of that legislation was repurposing empty vacant office buildings.
Right. I mean, the intent versus,
Right. I don't think anybody would be in a mood to turn like a retail frontage space into apartments.
you don't think anybody would?
I don't think they would.
And our code, this code wouldn't allow it because you couldn't have more than 50%.
If you couldn't rent it, you'd be more than willing to do it.
Yeah, but you'd run into other code problems very quickly, I think.
Okay. All right, let's move on to page 61.
51?
Sorry, 51. Anything, Commissioner Wilcox?
Yeah, I have one down toward the bottom under standards, number 2. It says at least 60% of the length of the ground level street facing facade of the building must meet the maximum setback standard. It's a little confusing the way that's worded, but my main question was, does that 60% figure also apply if the setback is the minimum or anything between the minimum and the maximum? Or is it just at the 15-foot setback?
I'm happy to chime in there, but I believe the intent would be if it meets the minimum and maximum setback, it would meet that standard. So as long as it does not exceed the minimum or maximum.
Okay.
So does that read that 40% of the frontage can be further?
Closer.
Closer.
Basically, what the intent of that is, so that we don't have buildings really far off the street. Because then that allows for, we want it to be pedestrian friendly, so closer to the street, easier to access for people walking, biking, and all other modes.
Danny, are you talking about the ability to convert a commercial building to residential use? The land itself, because there was an Oregon House Bill 2984 passed in 23, effective January 1, 2024, requires cities to allow conversion of commercial buildings to residential use, prohibits requiring a zone change or conditional use permit.
That's what I was thinking. And I don't know, I haven't read enough of it to know that if it's space or building.
Well, if you have an existing building in a commercial zone, you can convert it all or part to housing. Cities cannot force a rezoning just to allow that use. This is ORS 197A.445.
We get around that because this isn't a commercial zone, this is mixed use?
It's technically, yeah.
It's technically
so it's
commercial.
I would say it's technically residential. It's mixed use. So it's both, if you really want to get technical, it's both. You can do commercial and residential, that's why it's mixed use. That's why we have storefronts and apartments all in the same zone. But this calls out, I'm looking at it right now, and again, I have to do a deeper dive, but just what I'm seeing, can't be industrial, talks about you can't have a conditional use, basically stating if it's not permitted in the zone. So that's more like if where the Crunch Fitness is going in, that was a commercial building and they wanted to convert that to residential. We can't require we can't require a zone change to do so, 'cause it's commercially zoned property. And if they want it, we also can't require them to go through conditional use process in order to convert that building into residential.
And why is that?
Infill,
Oregon wanting to provide
a lot
more
of
housing.
vacant. If you think about it, in major cities in Oregon, there's a lot of vacant commercial office spaces.
I understand that,
That's
but
what they're doing.
That'd be
when we
a tough
require
one.
a conditional use permit for everything else that is in a different zone, but we can't require one if they make it into something that isn't a condition.
And again, I haven't read through this. I'm not sure if it has to be, like if it's not permitted in the zone. I haven't read through this fully. So if it's not permitted, I'm not sure if it still has to be allowed or not.
That doesn't make sense to me that you can redo, what happens if that commercial property's on the Superfund site and they want to put residential in there? There's a whole lot of things out there that can make it unhealthy for people to have. Like we wouldn't put residential on the Reynolds property, old Reynolds Metal property, because it is a Superfund site.
Well, the scope of that law applies statewide to Oregon cities and counties. Local governments shall allow qualifying affordable housing. Definition tie-in, affordable housing is defined directly in the statute. So it is for the purpose of trying to create more affordable housing.
That was really a lot of state law answers Portland problems. Doesn't really fit.
Okay, Erica Palmer, you were next.
I don't think we would see this occur here.
We don't have
And
spaces for it.
even the conversion from office to residential uses is a really high cost. And that's why you're not even seeing it happen throughout the state, even with this House bill.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Glantz.
I wanted to go back just a little bit to the how close a building is to the street. As someone, and I think of like Walgreens on Stark. I don't like that it's so close to the street when there's people that are pushing strollers, walking by. I wish there was a little bit more space there, especially with cars so close. It's hard to hear. It seemed like, I don't know, having people move closer to the street, I just don't see how that's pedestrian friendly.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Wilcox?
Yeah, something else that occurred to me when I think I heard someone mention when I was talking about the 60% of the facade and setbacks. And so the 40% of the facade could be set back as far as the developer chose, is the way I'm reading that. So what occurred to me was say it's set back 100 feet from the street, kind of an L-shaped building. So that could turn into parking on the side of the building. Is that something that's being considered or being promoted by allowing the 40% unlimited setback, basically?
So the way that this reads, maximum setback. So the maximum front setback is 15 feet. And at least 60% of the length of the ground level facing facade of the building must meet the maximum setback standard. So 60% of the building length must meet the maximum setback standard. The other 40% could be that building portion could be set back between 5 feet to 15 feet. It offers that flexibility.
Right, and it is saying the building, not the lot frontage. So what Commissioner Wilcox is saying is like you can have 60% of your lot frontage be building and the remaining, like it has in figure 2. And if you wanted to take up your lot frontage with parking, as long as it's outside of the setback area, you can do that. And that isn't affected by this language at all, because it's talking about building percentage of the building frontage, not of the lot frontage.
Correct.
Okay.
Let me ask a question.
Yes, Commissioner Owens?
So when I think about places that we stopped going, I was thinking about, well, why did we stop going, right? And a lot of these places are commercial on the bottom right, residential on the top. And there were 2 things that were factors. One is there wasn't enough in a commercial way for us to desire to go there so much. And then when we did go, parking was very hard to get. And without the businesses, I'm thinking that the parking was more residential flowing and taking up the spaces. And so it makes me wonder, are we requiring types of parking to where these spots are for the business and these spots are for residential? Because I think it's just open, right? With the exception of a loading, unloading maybe.
Correct.
So I don't know how we stay out of that trap, because I don't think we're alone, because when you reflect back, some of these places the area just died.
I want to go, the one that I've got is top of the page. Numeral I for 1.
What page was that?
On 52. Location of parking areas, circulation between the building street prohibited. We talked about somehow having access from the front to the back, like an alley. Doesn't look like we did. Do we not want to? Do we?
Driveway not considered a circulation area?
Driveway it is a circulation area.
Okay. So if that.
So what this is saying, Tanny, is that you can't have parking but in the setback area between the building and the street lot line.
Yes.
So the issue, I think, is, and I see this in all of these areas in different cities like Sandy, where you've got the downtown area and everything, and the same thing in Gateway, Portland, where you've got a big parking lot in the front, and then you get to, so pedestrians have to always cross through the parking lot. And that's hazardous and dangerous. And if people can just walk down the street and go right into the shop, that is pedestrian friendly.
And park on the back.
And I agree with you, but what I'm saying is, it's like if I've got a driveway and I want people to access this driveway to get to the back, and I know we've been over this before, but it just says, prohibited in the setback area between the building and the street lot line. That tells me that I can't drive a vehicle, I can't get a curb cut to go from the front to the back. Am I not reading that correctly?
I think if you go to figure 2, for example, then that, like, this is a good one to look at, for example. Because what that is stating is that you cannot have circulation in that setback area. So the minimum 5, maximum 15. Can't have a drive aisle, can't have that in the front between the building lot, the front lot line and the building. Now, if you go to the left of it, you have a drive aisle with a curb cut, and you have parking in the rear, parking on the right-hand side, that's fine.
To the left of what?
Like if like where that line is on the figure, if that were a drive aisle, that's fine. You can't have
the building and the parking?
On the left side of the
on the
building.
left side of it.
So I've got to go around the building.
Well, parking would then be located in the rear. So there's parking back there, or there's parking on the side.
A driveway would be permitted.
Rather than you just can't have
Because
anything.
it doesn't interfere with how much of the building has to be set back and what you can't have between the street and the building.
Okay, I see where you're getting at, because, I mean, because it says in the setback area between the building and the street lot line, if the only thing between the street line and the back of the lot is parking, there's no building there, therefore you can have a driveway.
Right, but it doesn't say that.
What it really, I think.
Does it say that?
Well, it does say between
does?
the building
Just-
and the street lot line.
They don't want parking or driving in front of the building.
Correct.
You can go inside the building and you can park in the back of the building.
Yeah, so because 4I calls out the building, driveways would then be permitted. Right. I see.
Okay,
At least that's the way I'm reading it.
all right.
I read it.
Commissioner Prickett?
Okay, so we have this curb cut. Parking is in the back. Someone comes along and says, okay, this says no parking here, but I'm gonna park here anyway, in the drive, in the alleyway or the driveway to get to the back. If it's not wide enough for 2 cars to pass by each other, you're gonna have
We have aisle width standards.
right, but my
And so
question
does
is,
the fire
somebody's
department.
somebody, and I'm not saying, but there's always somebody that's gonna park. Like, when I go to Portland, they're parked up, why ADA hasn't said anything, but the cars are parked on Stark Street, up on the curb, on the part on the sidewalk, and that's gonna happen.
Yeah. I mean, if that happens, that's on, we have width requirements, the fire department has width requirements. If that happens, there'll be, that's on the property owner to tell them.
To a certain extent, we're having that problem right now, just
Oh,
on
yeah.
city streets. I mean, look at Second Street when you were coming in.
But, yeah, I mean, I barely got through because there was a car coming, and my car is not, it's compact.
Okay. 52, so the primary entrance is always on the street side? And if you needed a second entrance, it would be on the back side? Okay. So would you have any uses that would need to use a back entrance, potentially?
Well, loading and unloading. Well, and some people do. There are businesses that have a back door that they come in off of parking from the backside.
Right, but and that's true, in today's environment, it's kind of like having 2 entrances is a tall order
Right.
for security purposes.
Yeah, it can be.
Can be?
It can be, yes.
Yeah.
We're not talking about can be, that's way off in the faraway land.
Okay. All right, anything else for 52? All right, blistering along.
I guess if we're talking about, excuse me, this wild idea popped in my head. Is there any way, when you're downtown Troutdale, you've got lanes for parking and then you have lanes for traversing. is there any way that we could require that the developer also develop an extra parking lane that could be commercial only, like loading and unloading, or even timed parking for the commercial ground floor units as part of, if they're gonna develop out that site, we're gonna make them create a wider street to create some street parking.
So we can't require that, but that is an option. We do have standards that they can follow if they wish to do that. But due to CFAC, we don't, like again, we can't require parking, but we do have standards for if they do want parking. And that we do have loading zone standards, we have timeline standards for loading zones. So we do have those things as well. It's just we can't outright write it in here as a requirement.
Okay,
Moving on.
all right. Anything else on 53?
Why the 53?
Yeah,
Didn't know we were on 53.
we were on 52.
Okay. 3B, second line reads, located within 20 feet of a street lot line. I'm wondering why the figure 20 feet is used there when the maximum setback is 15 feet. That's one question. The other one is, bottom of that paragraph, it says at least a recess that is at least 20 feet in length and 20 feet in depth. So a recess of 20 by 20, but then on page 55, there's a diagram that shows a recess of 10 by 20. So I'm kind of confused there.
You want MIG or do you want to?
Well, I can chime in. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if that was a question
ahead,
for me
Keith.
or not. I can see on figure 3, it does say, it shows a 20-foot by 20-foot recess on figure 3 maximum building length standard. And then regarding the setback, I believe, like we were saying with the city staff's interpretation, that some of the building could be set back more than the maximum setback as long as it meets the 60% requirement.
Okay, what about the diagram figure 4, where you show a recess of 10 by 20?
Oh, yeah, is that the top right one?
Yeah.
You see it says 10 by 20. If we can definitely fix any inconsistencies, or if there's if that should be 20 feet, that can be updated. I think that might just be an error.
Staff, was that supposed to be 20?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and I'm confused by what it's trying to explain here. The maximum building length for the portion of a building located within 20 feet. So if it has to be set back 15 feet, you're only talking about 5 feet. And so the portion of that building that is in that 5-foot stretch can only be 150 feet. That's wide.
So what that's saying is, so like the minimum setback is 5. So if the building's up on the front line, and then you have a articulate or a bump in, or however we're calling it, for the building standard, where then it goes, you can have a bump in 20 feet by 20 feet. So it's basically a depth change of building, so you don't have one straight flat wall of the 150 feet.
So it's 20 feet after the 5 foot.
Up to
Well, no, it says
150.
located within 20 feet of the street lot line. So it's within, but I really don't understand what it's trying to explain. Street lot line, 5-foot setback. So the part of the building that's within 5 feet to 20 feet from the street lot line. So that 15 foot section, right? The maximum length can only be 150 feet? It must be wide.
Of the frontage.
Yeah, it's frontage distance.
But if it's set back 30 feet, let's say,
Well, that's
example.
outside the maximum setback, so.
maximum setback.
And maximum is
Right.
15.
Okay.
So does that 20-foot in figure
Yes.
3 need to be
It does need to be.
reduced?
We're changing that to 50, right? Okay. Go to 50. And then let's move on. Okay, is that it for 53? So we'll go to 54. Anything on 54?
A couple, Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Wilcox.
Just going to point out under B at the top that 10 by 20 recess is also in the text. And let's see. Also, figure 3 on page 53, it says the maximum building length is 150 feet. But figure 3 is showing 150 feet up to the recess. And then there's building beyond the recess. So, not sure what's going on there.
Now, is the opening of the separation right all the way through? We're going from front to back? Or are we just in the front?
I'm just catching up here.
Okay.
So if you go back to the maximum building length. So it's really, what you're getting at, Paul, is the last, like, 2 sentences in that standard. The standard is met if 2 buildings are entirely separated, or when one building includes a recess that is at least 20 feet in length and 20 feet in depth.
Okay, I see.
So if you,
Okay.
yeah,
So, okay, so, and keep me honest here, so looking at 3B is referring to maximum building length,
Yes.
and then 4B is not referring to building length, but is referring to facade length.
Facade articulation.
yes.
So the diagram on figure 3 is referring to the building length standard, and the top right diagram on figure 4 is referring to the facade
Facade
standard.
articulation, yeah.
So both diagrams are then correct.
Correct.
So can you read B again?
Or B or
Change that you had?
I didn't have a change to be, I just read it slowly and clarified it. So 3B deals with the maximum building length, a length of a building. And what was brought up was this standard is met if you have 2 buildings that are entirely separated, or when one building includes a recess that is at least 20 feet in length and 20 feet in depth. And you go to figure 3, which is the maximum building length. And you see that maximum building length right there of 150, and it stops at that recess.
Therefore, that is the maximum, even though the buildings are connected, that's the maximum of that, what we would consider a building.
So if you have a 20 by 20 cutout, everything beyond that cutout is, as far as the code is concerned, considered to be a separate building.
Correct.
Even if they are
Start-
structurally
You would start a new measurement.
the same
Building,
thing.
structure.
Right.
So, so the 150-foot building maximum isn't really a maximum. You could have a 600-foot building as long as it's divided up every
long as
150 feet. Is that right?
True, but for the purposes of this code, that's what we're considering a building width. And then if you don't, or sorry, building length, yeah. But then the figure 4B is if it's 20 by 10, that's for the facade. So you need to have a bump in every, within the facade that's 20 by 10. And that's considered a separate facade. If it's 20 by 10, separate facade. If it's 20 by 20, separate building.
Why?
For articulation, so it's not just one big flat long building.
Correct. It breaks up the building, so you
breaks
don't
it up.
have like an expanse of a great big flat wall.
It costs more to build.
So they can put a flower pot and grow.
Exactly. They can put
They wanted
benches
to.
in there, they can
Do all sorts of things.
be a smoking area, people smoking.
Because the bottom figure on, or the bottom diagram on figure 4 is what that's saying, is that you have to have recessed or projected portions of the facade, a minimum of 25% of the facade area.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you have a deep cutout of at least 10 feet wide, then your calculations start over because that's a different facade.
Correct. So think of our current downtown,
Yep.
honestly. Think of the articulation across that, because all the kind of buildings, even though they're not all connected, but
Some are.
some are, you have that articulation, right? Of every
yes.
25 feet of, numerous different things. You have door entries, you have
You have like
outs.
Lolo's Pizza, right? Right there where it bumps in. That's still that's all one, but it bumps in for 2 different building entrances and then comes back out and continues. So it just gives you a depth difference.
It's a little different discussion of something that's 20 feet by 20 feet on a 40 or 50-foot building.
20 feet is a pretty deep cutout.
Well, I think the concern is that we're going to get something looking like this. And the planning commission can decline to allow somebody to build some big monstrosity with, palm trees every 150 feet. But it's still all looking like one 600-foot industrial megalith. What?
I don't think that's gonna happen.
The design,
Either.
the design, at least if I'm reading correctly, the facade design requirements would break up that 150-foot span.
Yeah. And then after 150 feet, you have to have it go in 20 by 20. And that 20 by 20, if there's a commercial space, has a primary on the street side, maybe it has another door there where that's an outdoor eating area. That's a possibility that a developer can do. Where it's not in the front, but it's right in that they're utilizing that space.
Okay. 56. Isn't that where we're at?
56, yes.
All right. Go ahead, Commissioner Wilcox.
Nothing, I'm sorry, nothing there.
Okay.
I have one quick thing.
Yes.
It also once again, we're referring to street facing on D, street facing facade of ground floors that are within 20 feet of the public right of way. Is that, do we need to adjust that to be within the maximum setback?
D to be,
15 feet instead of,
on B1, Dakota, could you spell out 25%?
Oh, yes, I think Commissioner Wilcox pointed that one out to me before, and I added. He said some previous, just some Scrivener's things, and I've gone through, so if they pop up, I'll let you know if they've been caught, and I have done that since then.
Of course he did. Okay. All right.
Could I just get clarification from, MIG about the building design requirements 4.730D, the ground floor windows? If, should that be changed to 15 feet? If the maximum setback is 15 feet?
Well, there would be some portions of the building that could be outside of that maximum setback, or outside of that, maximum setback. So this is only intended to apply to those portions of the building that are within the 20 feet,
That's true.
if that makes sense.
So we had 20?
Yeah, I would leave it at 20.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Keegan.
No problem.
All right. Anything else on 56?
Oh, no, I have one chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Let's see. Under D, it says, C, 12-foot bottom, 12-foot floor height, basically. And then on page 59, the drawing shows a 15-foot floor to ceiling height or exterior
I
dimension
noticed that
anyway.
as well, and I have a comment to fix that in the diagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
Okay. Anything else there?
No, that's it.
Okay. 57? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Wilcox.
Nothing except nothing except the missing H that Kevin noted earlier. Pretty good catch there, Kevin.
All right, so we're going to renumber H, I, and J consecutively. All right, 58. This is the plaza.
I have one on that one.
Go ahead, Commissioner Wilcox.
Number 2 talks about the plaza dimensions, minimum dimensions of 15 feet by 15 feet. I think the intent there is to specify a minimum side dimension, kind of like the one for the outdoor living space that's 6 foot minimum on a side of for 48 square feet. But it's not clear that they're saying 15-foot minimum on a side, basically.
Okay, they say minimum dimensions 15 feet by 15 feet. All right. So what would you recommend?
Just like 15, minimum 15 feet on a side.
Okay,
15 by 15 is not 500 square feet.
correct.
Oh, there's that too.
Both conditions, right?
Yes.
The highest of,
It has to be 500 square feet. It can't be overly skinny.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
okay. All right, So you guys are good with that change? And, okay, flying right along. We've talked about the drawing on 59. Okay, so we go to 60. Nothing. 61. 62. 63. And 64. Okay.
Oh, I have one quick question on 63 on just came to me on the building height of the corner. And it shows a corner structure that is significantly taller than the rest of the building. That corner would still have to apply the height standards of the rest of the code,
Correct.
Correct.
You're absolutely correct.
Okay. Okay, 64, Commissioner Wilcox.
No, nothing.
Okay, so I have two things. One on A, the last line, spell out 50 feet there.
Yep, that was one that Commissioner Wilcox pointed out. So I have that one.
Neener. Okay, so since we're trying to get things that we want and we value, what if there was an incentive to put in additional parking, since we know that's a problem?
As one of the,
How's that coincide with CFEC?
Doesn't, because it's an incentive.
it's an incentive, not a requirement.
I like where you got it.
You could add it as an incentive.
I really like that.
What's the incentive?
A certain,
You get to go taller.
We will, 75 feet.
No,
No. Well, no, what is the incentive?
Well,
It'd be just one of the, instead of the 6, he's saying add a 7. Yeah, 4 of the 7. And one of the 7th would be provide parking.
some quantity
Some.
of public parking spaces.
so I'll just, okay, so like when you look at this and if you can put in parking, but you don't have to put in parking. So I'm just running from the assumption that maybe someone doesn't put in parking theoretically. And they do the landscaping and they do the seating and the mural and those things. And so you get to go up another level as a bonus. Are you not exasperating a known problem at that point?
Well, and to a certain extent, I think adding parking to that list is potentially handing developers some low-hanging fruit. Because most developers, as we've talked about repeatedly, even though CFEC allows them to not put any parking in, they're gonna put some parking in under most circumstances because, that's what their tenants want and need. So allowing that as sort of an easy pick, kind of like what we did in the CFEC code, the commercial paid parking option that we picked on that, even though we don't have any of those in the city, we were allowed to pick that as one of our list of options. I'm not sure we want to give developers that low-hanging fruit as I say, you can put in parking and that'll let you go higher. It seems like a freebie.
Okay, so I guess the flip side of that would be, what if someone didn't put in parking at all and met the criteria to go to 50 feet? And I know what we're saying about how, and I agree, most likely they're going to put in parking. Okay, I agree with that. But if that is the case, why have we mandated parking for 40 years? Why are we telling them what type of lights they're gonna put in, what the spacing of things is gonna be, what the windows are gonna be? If we're really saying they're gonna do the right thing,
Some will, some won't.
So what about, right now, it's 4 out of 6.
Yeah.
Why not 5 out of 7? If they're gonna like grab that other one, then we still
You
are
still,
gonna have 4 out of the 6 that we want them to do.
right, but you still run the risk of, out of that 7, parking is one of those 7, that's gonna be the one of the 2 that they don't pick.
But I think it also
But we
gives us a
can't
way to
mandate
add
them to
parking.
do it.
So,
Now they're gonna have to pick 5
So-
out of the remaining 6. 5 out of 6, that's a win for us. We can't force them to do parking, unfortunately.
right, but if they're going to do parking anyhow, why not give them a Scooby snack for doing it? Okay, because frankly, for me, the bench is a pretty low-hanging fruit.
No, but
That's a pretty easy one to hit. So it's like, if I'm gonna do the parking anyhow,
then why do I need an incentive? Why do they need an incentive to do something they're gonna
to
do?
do more.
To do more parking?
I think it's an assumption that they're gonna do it, because some of the developers, they don't. They just don't. I don't know
Well, and
why.
you can look, and I'm gonna say this, you can look down Stark Street about where the woodshed used to be. There's a 5 or 6 story apartment complex with no parking, and they're all on the street.
Right.
And there was no parking at all.
Will CFEC allow us to give incentives for them to put in whatever, parking that's in excess of what CFEC normally allows?
I don't think there's anything against it.
Okay.
The CFAC.
So,
Sorry.
so we could, so what you're asking them to do is build more parking than what they would ordinarily do.
They could.
So then that's, okay, so then
And
that
that's,
becomes the
and we
incentive.
would
So we
consider that
say,
community value?
I would think so.
can we say, all right, if you'll build 100% parking, whatever, 80% parking, we'll let you build an extra floor. Can we do that specifically?
I don't know. I don't have that answer. I would want to go back and do a little digging, a little research, to make sure that that is not in conflict with the intent of the CFAC rules.
I will just say this as a final response, and I see you guys, hang on a second. But when you look at the transit piece, okay? We have transit service there from 7 a.m., right? To 10 a.m. on the hour, and then it goes to half hour to 45 minutes, and then at the end of the day, the last 2 are by the hour, and the last bus is at 11:40. And I know that the state standards got changed, but these do not meet the federal transportation standard.
We've had that conversation,
I know.
adopting CFAC. I don't think we need to get into that tonight.
No, I'm just stating that it would be a reason for requesting additional parking.
But the incentive has to be an incentive that works for us. That is more parking than what you're saying they would automatically build, if they were gonna build parking at all. So we have to be specific and say, no, it's not, you don't get to build an extra floor if you're just gonna put in what you would normally put in. We want more.
Well, they have the opportunity, so right now, these properties that are zoned MX or MU1 and MU2 in this area do not have an off-street parking minimum. So a developer can come in and they can provide the flexibility for how much parking they feel that the development needs to be successful. What we're seeing in mixed-use suburban developments is that developers are putting in parking. Especially, in areas that are, outside of, Portland. Because, people out here they have more cars, they have more vehicles, they drive more, to get to places. So right now, we don't have off-street minimum parking standards within this area. I don't know if we can create a standard that says, yes, you can go up to, or you can go above 35 feet, but if you do so, you need to put in X amount of spaces. That's what I'm hearing that Planning Commission would like me to look into.
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Glanz.
Yep, I was going to say that I absolutely love this idea. And it's one of those, does it, meet a public need? Absolutely 110%. And the devil's going to be in the details of, number of parking spaces per, I don't know, unit or floor or something like that. Would need to be clear and consistent. But yeah, no, love this idea. Love it.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilcox?
Sounds like we're on page 64. uh, uh, Last month I thought a lot about the height bonus, and I can't go along with that. 5 years ago I voted against the height limits that went into Confluence MU3, and I can't go 4 stories. I can't go 50 feet. I'd consider maybe bump to 35 to 40 to allow for higher floor to ceiling ground floor, but still restrict to 3 stories. So essentially, I won't go 4 stories, and I won't go 50 feet.
Okay. Commissioner Allen?
I do like what Paul's saying there, Commissioner Wilcox. My experience has been that more times than not, my developer friends will develop a property and they want to put in enough parking to be able to sell that property, but not necessarily what parking is needed. They just want to get the thing sold. The exception is that they hold on to the property and then they want it to be successful, right? So they put enough parking just to get it sold. Then somebody else buys it and they're running the property or managing it, right? And they're the ones who get stuck with whether the business fails or whatever. You get some people that lose their savings over that kind of thing. But I do like the idea, if you're going to increase the demand on parking, I think that's a good idea. If you're going to add a floor and increase the demand on parking, then it's an incentive to Troutdale to have parking available there because we want to see our businesses survive and be successful. We want to see our citizens happy. Now the question is, how high would we allow it to go? Because what the developer is going to desire and what the average Troutdale citizen has expressed that they desire is different. There's conflict there. So I'd be willing to go, personally I'm thinking 40 to make, like Commissioner Wilcox said, to make the taller ground floor possible. But I'm gonna wanna hear what others think about that.
I'm thinking that the next move is going to be right for you to see where this goes. See where we're at, see if this is even plausible.
We can continue
All right.
to a date certain.
Yes.
I agree with Paul. I think 40 feet, two-story and give the commercial more flexibility for what they want to put in it. Cap it at 40 feet. 50 feet is just too much.
So would it be 2 stories is a given and the third floor has incentives?
I think that 40 feet should be the max. I don't,
Was that 40 feet at 3 stories or 40 feet at?
40 feet would be 3 stories.
3 stories.
45 feet
Let's-
is the
see where we're at.
baseline for
Yeah,
4
let's see where
stories.
we're at on that.
Okay.
That's what I want to see.
Is 2 floors the given and the third is the incentivized one? Or is it 3 floors are the given?
Well,
As long as it's plausible to
it
do.
sounds like we've got an issue on the table still with height a little bit and with parking. And I think other than that, I think we've hammered this out. Am I misreading anything?
No, I think.
Commissioner Glanz? No? Okay.
I was just going to ask if we can have a 5-minute break.
No.
I'm out of water and tea.
Yeah, do you guys want to take a quick break since we have an update after this? You guys want to do that? Ms. Palmer?
Sure. Are we gonna
We'll come back to this.
okay.
That'd be all right. We'll take a 5-minute break now and come back. Okay. So we'll be back in at 9:28.
Perfect. Thank you.
A mercy break.
This is a mercy break. Okay. Where are you? There you go. 13. Let's get back in action here, okay? We're back in session. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to Wednesday, May 13th, 2026 at 7 p.m.
I so move.
I second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to continue the public hearing to Wednesday, May 13th at 7 p.m. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, I don't think we need roll call, correct, for that?
I don't believe so.
With it being in a continuation?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
But if you do,
But we just made a new rule. Okay. All right. Thank you all. That is a lot of work. Okay, so if we could move on to updates. Ms. Palmer, do you want to take?
yes, I'll take it away. So last week was our first kickoff meeting to update the city's economic opportunities analysis. An EOA is required by the state, state land use goal 9, economic development, and our analysis hasn't been updated since 2011. And lots of things have changed since 2011. We came out of a recession during that time. Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park was just taking off, and we were seeing development occur, such as Amazon, the grocery distributor, and most recently, the battery energy storage facility. Also, since 2011, during that time, we had COVID in 2020, and it changed, a lot about, how people work and how they work. And we've seen a lot of technological advances as well during that time. So it's a great opportunity. The state provided us a grant to update our EOA. We are thinking it's probably gonna take anywhere between 4 to 6 months to complete this project. We have a great project advisory team made up of agency partners and as well as business owners and business operators here in Troutdale. So FedEx is part of our team, McMenamins is part of our team, and it's a great group of people. We have a project website for this project up on the planning page, and scroll to our active projects. You can review the agendas and all the meeting materials and presentations that have been given. So the next project advisory team meeting hasn't been scheduled yet, but it's going to be scheduled here in the next couple of weeks. And after we have that meeting, I'm gonna come back to Planning Commission and kind of give you an update, a more formal update about the EOA. What the trends we are seeing in employment opportunities, and give you an update about our land supply, because the EOA kind of looks at two different things. It looks at kind of like what the trends in economic development, have been and will continue to be, and what our land use supply is for employment. Do we have enough land supply for employment opportunities during the 20-year planning period that the state always says we have to plan for a 20-year land supply for residential and employment. So I'm going to come back to the Planning Commission and give you some more technical updates about this document, because this document will be coming to the Planning Commission and you will be making a recommendation on this document to City Council for formal adoption, because we will adopt this document as well as kind of some goals and policies for our economic development strategies within the city's comprehensive plan. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. Take your next one.
All right, moving on to the next one. Again, last week we had our first kickoff meeting for the 2nd Street Bridge concept plan. So I just want to reiterate, the city is not building a bridge currently across 257th. We are looking at developing a concept plan. Is it feasible? And if it is, what would that look like? And again, we have a great project advisory team for that project as well, that's made up of Troutdale residents, business owners here in downtown. Home Forward is also on that project advisory team, as well as the property owners across the way, the Troutdale food station, and we also have folks on that project advisory team from the CAC and Planning Commission and TCAB as well. So we have a lot of good voices on that committee. And we expect that this project is gonna probably run into late fall. And we're gonna be doing a lot of public engagement. So our next step, we're gonna be having another project advisory team meeting here, probably in early June. And we're gonna be talking about moving forward with an online open house and an in-person open house about some concepts and having some dialogue, open dialogue with the community about this project.
Okay. Commissioner Glantz.
I have a question. Can we also, as we're looking at this, look at the budget impact? I appreciate that
Yes.
it may not be general fund, but obviously our general fund, is a little challenged right now, so.
Yeah, this project will kind of scope out a very, preliminary cost of a bridge facility. And we will look at what funding mechanisms are out there that the city could utilize to fund such a structure if the city wanted to move forward with a project like this in the future.
Right. I just don't want it to say, okay, we get 3 million in federal money, million from Metro, and the city pays for 1 million. I want to know where the city's money portion comes from specifically. Is it coming from
And I don't even
some of
think
our infrastructure or?
Yeah, Commissioner Glantz, I don't think we're even there yet with that conversation. Really, this concept plan is just, can we put a bridge there, and what will it look like? And it'll provide a preliminary cost estimate for that. Those next steps is what you're talking about is really kind of the next phase if the city decides to move forward with a project.
Okay. I'm mentioning this now because I know sometimes, I don't know what you call it, scope creep, where we start with, oh, we're just going to look at it. And then before we know it, we're arguing on how to pay for it. So
One thing I will say, Commissioner Glantz, because I sit on that group, both as a CAC and as a planning commission representative, as well as a resident. And one of the things that we did bring up during that discussion is specifically calling out not just the money required and the budget required to build the darn thing, but also for ongoing maintenance and the impact to whichever organizational budget is ultimately going to be responsible for that. So those things are definitely discussion items.
perfect. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I don't know how CAC was. I know Planning Commission's been a little agitated.
Well, the other thing that I made a very specific point to the consultants involved is that when public outreach is done, one of the things that we must absolutely do is make that feedback that we get as pervasive and as broad-based as we can possibly make it. Because we do know that there's some very vocal opposition to this, even at a conceptual level. But if as a project, if they are able to pull in from the wider populace a very broad-based and documented and statistically significant support for it, then that's a different animal. So, but I'm just getting a smattering of responses isn't going to do it. We have to make sure that when we do public outreach, that we do everything we can to make the feedback that we get statistically significant.
Commissioner Allen?
Wouldn't that be a Mugtuck Region 1 transportation type project? We are talking about a county road and a pedestrian crossing, which there's state funds for.
Yeah. It would be one of the
State funds, federal funds, yeah.
There's a whole alphabet soup involved.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the gas tax required to be spent on such projects.
The bridge was actually put on, as I say, the bridge was actually put on a Muktuk's 20-year transportation plan.
Okay. Back to you, Ms. Palmer.
We are having a community celebration for Sharon Nesbitt Heritage Park. And it is scheduled for June 20th, which is a Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. We're gonna have a lot of fun activities that day for folks to take part in. We're gonna have a trail parade. We'll have free goodies. So it'll be a fun time to get out to the park with your family and friends for a couple hours. Or the whole day.
What was the date again?
Saturday, June 20th.
Saturday, June 20th.
We might even have some llamas. Surprises. That's all for me.
All right.
I guess the only thing for me is you all, I will be seeing you all at the end of this month for a special hearing for the two case files, one conditional use for Dakota Coffee downtown and the other one for a variance for Home Forward Monument sign. Those are moving right along, so we'll be ready to come back here in a couple weeks and go through those two applications. Other than that,
Okay, thank you. All right. Commissioner Wilcox.
No, nothing more, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Glantz.
The llamas sound fun. I can't wait to do Is Your Mama a Llama? I asked my friend Fred. That's all I have.
Commissioner Kester.
Darn you for putting the llama song back in my head. But yeah, I guess just a reminder for people, the Spring Parks and Rec Guide has hit mailboxes by this point. Look at the fun stuff that's in there. The next iteration of the Troutdale Game Day is this coming Saturday from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. right next door to the CCS building. But other than that, good meeting, and see y'all in a couple weeks.
Commissioner Allen.
As usual, I appreciate the interaction, the sharing of thoughts, and that would be it.
Commissioner Mink.
Well, thank you to staff. A lot of hard work. I'm glad we were able to break it up into 2 sessions. Makes it a bit easier to chew. That's it. Unfortunately, where I had a month ago said, or 2 months ago said I could make the April 28th meeting or 29th, I'm not able to. So I'll miss you all terribly. I'll be in New Orleans at my stepdaughter's wedding.
Oh, congratulations.
So thank you very much. And anyway, but thank you.
Well, we'll see you in May.
You definitely will for part 2.
Commissioner Prickett?
Question, you gave me contact to have something fixed. I can't remember. I didn't write it down for Multnomah County. Is it Multnomah Co?
So, if there's a pothole.
No,
or
I'm
a
talking
sign-
about the trees need to be trimmed around the slow blinking lights for the school zone. You can't see it because there's a sign that says crosswalk and then the tree kind of covers, just give one line.
I'll email you the contact information.
Okay, because I have another issue too, the crosswalk.
Great.
Be safe, and those crosswalks, they're there, those medians are there. That median, those signs hadn't been in that median more than a month and somebody already took one out. So just drive safely down 257.
Thank you.
But thank you, staff, you guys are wonderful, and crew.
Commissioner Glantz, do you want to go back
No, I
to
was-
the Llama song?
Oh.
Do you have something?
Nope, I found it.
All right. Okay, yes, thank you, everyone. Long night, a lot of hard work. Thank you so much, staff, for all that you've done, and these things are wild sometimes. Reminder, we have council meeting next week, Tuesday, the 14th, and Budget Committee meets on the 20th and 22nd in this room at 6 p.m. So with that, thank everyone for being here this evening and contributing, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Chair Stephenson, I move we adjourn.
I second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.